besties.
Hey everybody, welcome to the NEPA Scene Podcast, the only live streaming in-person arts and entertainment podcast covering northeastern Pennsylvania, offering a true alternative voice in local media. We're coming to you from the NEPA Scene studio underneath Center City Print in downtown Scranton. I'm Rich Howells, the founder and editor of NEPA Scene, and tonight we're here with Scranton Fringe Festival directors and organizers Conor Kelly O'Brien, Simone Daniel, and Dan Kimbrough. The 10th anniversary of the Fringe is coming up on September 26th through October 6th. So we're going to talk about a decade of this performing arts festival and the work that goes into it, curating a lineup of shows for everyone across the city, the Taking Up Space Film Festival showcasing the work of BIPOC filmmakers, going from actors to directors and much, much more. So please join our conversation with your questions and comments down below. We'll get to those later on in the show. Before we dive in, I just want to thank our sponsor, Center City Print, who has provided the studio space for us. You can use promo code NEPA Scene in person or online at Center City Print for 10% off. Center City Print can bring your ideas to life in 3 locations: Scranton, Kingston, and Hazleton. These one-stop shops are locally owned and operated, offering high-quality printed products, copy and custom print services, and design solutions to help you, your small business, your nonprofit, your band, your photography, your art project, or any venture thrive. Visit them now at centercityprint.com and use promo code NEPA Scene online or in person for 10% off. So please start by telling us a little bit about yourselves.
Should I start?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. My name is Conor Kelly O'Brien. I am the co-founder and executive director of the Scranton Fringe Festival. I'm also a theater maker and nonprofit organizer in my own right outside of that. And I'm super happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Simone Daniel. I am a director, writer, designer, and all-around longtime friend of the Fringe.
And I'm Dan Kimbrough. I'm the tech director for the Fringe Festival and help out with the Fringe and other areas as far as tech goes throughout the year also. I'm also the artistic director for the Taking Up Space Film Festival.
So tell us how you feel going into the 10th year of the Scranton Fringe.
We were just talking about that before we started. It oddly feels exactly like 10 years. In many, many ways, and then simultaneously does not. I co-founded it with Elizabeth Bohan, who's our managing director to this day, and you know, it was a long path to get here, but it did go by so quickly. This sounds cliche. I'm just super grateful. It's amazing, you know, especially in a region like this where we have a wonderful, thriving art scene, and we often say that we couldn't have created the festival without that foundation. But it does, you know, per capita, Pennsylvania has some of the worst arts and culture funding in the country. And we're just so lucky, and it's such it's difficult to wrap your head around the achieving any kind of milestone in this industry, let alone in our little corner of Northeast Pennsylvania, for this kind of a festival and this kind of a model celebrating its 10th year. And we're already in the process of planning our season next year, which is insane to me.
It seems like Scranton and Lackawanna County have really embraced this over time, and you know, kind of are really getting it now in terms of like what it is and you know how to make it work. Was that easy, or did that take some convincing over the years?
No, it wasn't easy. I will say, to be fair, one of the first things Liz and I were ever told, I can't remember who, and I apologize, but because we belong to a World Association of Other Fringe Festivals and a U.S. chapter, relatively unaffiliated, and one of the first things we were told was, just accept now you will spend every minute of your professional career, as long as you stay in this role, explaining what a Fringe Festival is. And they said, just if you accept that now, let it go, and it won't bother you as much. And it still did. It still does for a little while. I mean, my own voice to text still thinks we're running a refrigerator festival, or French
Festival.
Yeah, a French festival.
Yeah, we're just all about Frigidaire.
I feel like at the beginning of every year, like talking to you and Liz, like, how you guys doing? Are you ready? You're like, we really feel like this is the year we won't have to explain what a Fringe Festival is to everybody anymore. And I'm like, yeah, you got this, guys. But then you do.
No. But I will say we don't have to do it quite as much. And, you know, when I go speak to a room, on average, out of 20 people, instead of 2 people having heard about it before, it's now usually like half, you know, depending on, and you know, and it's also a lesson of learning what rooms to be in, and not just the audiences and stuff like that. No, it was difficult. I think that people, I just said this, we did an interview not that long ago, and they're a wonderful person, but they asked a question and like sent my blood boiling of like, now people want to get tickets, how does that work? As if it's like this foreign concept to go to a website and buy tickets.
Right.
Like, it's so interesting that people, I've said this before, like they almost fetishize that we're so different. And which is, on the one hand, you want to be a platform for work that doesn't have a home elsewhere, but on the other hand, like we also literally have like, we've had like Our Town and Shakespeare in the Fringe Festival. So like, I guess I think sometimes that's a misconception that we're exclusively for like edgy and out there, when ultimately what a Fringe Festival is, it's about letting artists lead what do they want to do and lead the direction and lead the conversation. If they want to do edgy and out there, awesome. If they want to do high level, professional, polished, traditional theater, that's awesome too. It's not about one or the other. Does that answer the question?
In terms of the film festival, do you have that same sort of getting people to understand what this is and the importance of it? Or
100%. This is the 3rd year for the film festival, and it's still very, very small in how it's operating because it's still part of Fringe overall, and trying to figure out the best avenue to go about. But whenever I bring up the film festival, it's always, so what is it? And I explain that it's the idea of celebrating art in film that either discusses or is created by BIPOC individuals, and don't we have enough? And going down that line of explaining, but it's a platform for them, and so individuals, and that's one of those big things that people tend to forget that, and we see it with the Emmys and the Oscars and all these other ones, where it's not so much the ability that you can enter a festival, but a festival that understands sort of where you're coming from, and that's one of the big things with taking up space is that it's about the voice of the narratives, and so you may be seeing stories that you've already seen, boy meets girl, or boy meets boy, or girl meets girl, and whatever happens next, but you're seeing it through the lens of a marginalized individual that you may not have heard the story directly from them. You may have seen it in Hollywood, but it's also filtered through Hollywood. This is an actual filmmaker who's literally getting a chance to do it and a platform to do it here in Scranton. So, but I do have to explain often that it's just not another random film festival. There's a purpose behind it, and that in that vein is also why it's embedded in the Fringe Festival as well.
Well, I mean, I will say this. We're also, NEPA Scene turned 10 years old this month, too.
Congrats.
I didn't realize that.
Thank you so much.
That's rad.
And I still have to explain what it is to people all the time. I mean, if they're outside of the area, I don't mind explaining what a NEPA is. A NEPA...
Oh wow!
Yeah, they just literally have never heard that term, which I totally get because I'm sure there's a lot of other weird ones across the United States that are all different abbreviations for things. So I get that, but yeah, locally I have to explain that all the time to people, like what it is and stuff. And then a lot of times they're like, "Oh, I'm going to follow." Oh, I already follow your page. I already did 5 years ago. Oh, okay, cool. So you still don't know what it is.
Yeah.
That's weird. So tell us about maybe some of the feedback that you've received over the years from these shows, like the reactions that you've gotten from putting these things on.
From like the audience perspective? Or from we always get, again, it's so difficult to pin down answers because it's such an eclectic mix of shows. The audiences are therefore eclectic, and like what they like, they don't like. I will tell you, one of the best compliments you'll receive is when someone goes like, it was so difficult to make decisions on what I want to see. Yeah. And we've curated a little tighter in recent years. If you go back, it's not huge drastic difference, but a little tighter and a little more selective primarily for time and space and resources and diversity of voices and artistic content. But when someone's like, oh, but I want to see this and I want to see this and I want to see this, and it's still sometimes you do have to make tough decisions. And it's so wonderful to say, because we're giving as many people as we can with our resources a platform. And how wonderful is that? And when it's local, that's, there's a whole level of that's fantastic, and they get, the MFA program at Wilkes University that we've worked with now for the last 2 years, about giving them a platform and their playwrights, like their first even semi-professional mounting of their work, and seeing that come to fruition. It's so fantastic. And then in turn, there's touring acts, and how awesome is it to get, 1 or 2 weekends a year here in Scranton, we get to see that kind of theater come in, play, and leave again. We have wonderful theaters here, and we have like the Broadway Theater League, but it's sometimes difficult to find things on that more like small mid-level scale, and I'm really grateful that we get to give that platform, not just during the festival, but primarily during the festival. Audiences are, I will say, like they're getting it much more than they ever did. Still an uphill conversation. It's always an uphill battle, but but really it is fantastic. And I will say we've also learned if you don't get it, that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. That's great. And then it's not for you. I had someone at my mother's foot doctor recently. I wasn't even there. My sister told me this. My mom was wearing one of our like Team Fringe T-shirts, and the person was like, "You guys, they need to promote that. When do I hear about that?" And my sister was like, "Well, do you read the paper? Do you watch the news? Do you listen to the radio?" And again, and the answer is, if you're not seeking it out, then maybe you actually don't care, and you're just making conversation, and that's okay too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, but it's half about improving your practice and getting the word out there as best we can, and we're so grateful to platforms like yours because it really reaches that particular audience so well, in an arts and culture going audience. And again, sometimes that's the answer. It's I'd rather reach everyone here than necessarily reaching maybe a higher quantity somewhere, but it's getting diluted in static, constantly.
Sure.
I'm going to flip this table. What have you seen from audiences digesting not just Fringe, but all the content that you've been putting out? I didn't realize we were both celebrating 10 years at the same time. That's so cool.
I get a lot of a lot of people watch the open mic. And that's pretty fun because they get to see kind of these up and coming artists that they wouldn't be familiar with otherwise, and they kind of get to see the same thing I see, where I see them improve each week, and they practiced in between, so they got a little bit better and things like that. So I get a lot of, oh yeah, I saw that guy, a lot of usually positive stuff. Every once in a while you get what was with that dude? And I'm like, hey, if you open the stage to everybody, yeah, exactly, you're gonna get all kinds. So but yeah, I get a lot of stuff about that. Definitely, at least if they don't watch the whole podcast, they might at least catch like, oh, okay, this is who was on and this is what's going on. So at least it lets people know in that sense too. And that's part of why I've shifted focus ever since live streaming became a thing. The podcast immediately became a live stream. I live stream more bands when I'm out at shows and things like that. Because that's what people want to see. They want to know what's happening right then, right now, and they want to be able to tune in and get good quality and get an idea of what's going on, even if they maybe don't have time to digest hours and hours of content. Right. And I've definitely tried to keep that content diverse in terms of like, I'm a writer, so I like to write, and I like to write long. So when I write an article, I write in the mind of people who are only going to skim and watch and read that first part. I kind of give them enough information in that first few paragraphs that they can get the idea if they want. But if they want to continue, they want to get a little bit more, then that's also how I'm writing too, is I'm putting all those extra details in for the people who actually want or are really interested in the topic and they really want to read more. So I keep doing that. And on top of the videos and the live streams and the podcasts and stuff like that, and try to keep it diverse, because I don't really see a lot of other local publications doing that. And now I was just saying at the Steamtown Music Awards, which thank you to everybody who voted for us, by the way. We actually won podcast for the first time this year too. Yes. So I was really happy about that, because I've tried to improve my voice when it comes to this stuff too, because I'm really a behind the camera kind of guy. I'd prefer to just not be on camera at all and not do this and not be talking in this manner. If I could do it with some kind of weird mask on and it wouldn't be strange, that's how I would probably do this, or at least have somebody else sit in this chair and do it. But then I'd be kind of sitting there, well, I would have done it this way, or I would have asked them this or that sort of thing. So I guess maybe a little, if you run your own thing, you want to control it. You want to do it the way you want it done, that sort of thing. So I kind of have no choice. But I think I've gotten better with being able to have these conversations and not so much of the pauses, the that kind of stuff. I'm really working on that. So I hope that the award reflects that. But yeah. That's kind of
And before you move on to answer another question about the feedback, one thing I do want to say is during the pandemic, me not being in Scranton, I'm in Wilkes-Barre, so going back and forth, I heard from a lot of folks in Wilkes-Barre during the pandemic who were very happy that we did Fringe Under Glass. And it was the idea, and I think it's one of those things that because Fringe is a very loose definition, it's the idea of we're just giving you a platform and we want all to be there. Pivoting becomes a little easier because it's not because with Fringe, every place for us is a stage. And so if we could turn anything into a stage normally with an audience in the room, when they came up with the idea of let's do Fringe Under Glass, we have the silent tech and disco tech and all these things, and do it that way, and being able to give the community art in a point in time where we're telling people to stay home, stay away, don't do any of these things, and we're saying, no, we've figured out a way where you could safely come together and still enjoy art and be in the city and do those things. And there was a lot of positive feedback from people that in a time that when there wasn't much going on, it was cool to see that Fringe was able to step up to the plate and provide some art for the community to be able to get out and get to. So
That was like my favorite iteration of Fringe. I think that was so awesome. It was so
here.
cool.
What was she?
It was so. I was in this building.
you were here.
Yeah, I was in this building. Maybe that's why I'm feeling really connected to it right now. I want to put on a mask. It was just great. I didn't know if it was big. I know it was because it was so inventive, and I was like, wow, this is so inventive. This is so clever. This is amazing.
We all needed it.
But also needed it so badly,
Yeah.
so badly. I loved Fringe Under Glass. It was so cool.
Comment below if you want to see that again.
Has that, post-pandemic, a lot of people talk about how they're like, well, okay, maybe this was really cool, and maybe we should keep doing it this way, or maybe that we should change how we do things now with this in mind, and that sort of thing. So, how has the Fringe adapted since then? Obviously, you want to do more stuff like that, but have you kept that in mind? And
We absolutely. It's a conversation we're having. Right, we've had a lot, but I mean, since 21, 22, or 2020, 2020 and 2021, when we did it, we've been talking about it since then, that we wanted to get back to the more traditional festival model. I do think it's important to mention that, the pandemic is over for some of us. It's not over for all. So I do want to mention that we do have a select number. You can go to our website or pick up a Scranton Fringe guide. We do have a certain number of performances that are mass required. It's typically the first matinee performance of any show that has matinees. It's not all, unfortunately, but some. And we're very happy to, that's part of our inclusivity model. Disability, LGBTQ, and BIPOC creators are kind of like our three main focal points now. Not always and forever. We want to extend just as much as we can with our resources. But doing Fringe Under Glass as a standalone event outside of the fall festival is something that we really want to do. I promise it's not a question of if, it's just a question of like when the stars have to align. We've always talked about, like, when we planned that, whatever we did before Fringe Under Glass became the final product, we were very adamant that whatever we do has to be interesting on its own and has to be dynamic on its own and inclusive on its own. Weirdly enough, at the time, there was a little more freedom with funding. Because there was such little going on, so we were able to get grant funding for that project for 2 years, that even if we had to cancel every single show, everyone would get their compensation, which was important to us. We can't necessarily guarantee that now. We have a certain funding secured, so we have certain cushions, but a lot of what we do is project to project based. So we definitely want to do it again. I personally think it should be like in the spring, because summer is getting hotter.
Yeah,
and summer there's like a time period, in my opinion, and Liz is somewhere like going, no.
we don't have anything going on.
We don't. We have a lot going on year round. That's the thing. Like it's sometimes it's hard to find a certain point. I think like spring before graduation, wedding season kicks in, but when it's warm enough that we want to be outside and enjoying that. Because we've talked about, like, should we do it as like a show in the festival?
You should actually probably stage it. Sorry to interrupt. You should
please.
stage it against Parade Day.
Yeah. That would be
just small groups of
and just make it as
in the middle of the room while Parade Day is
make it as inconvenient as possible
Yeah.
for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think that's the move.
I mean, it's what we like
You're
to
welcome.
do.
Yep.
Just
I'm
disrupt
gonna be
everything.
sick that year.
Yeah, I will be and present. It'll be a really complicated day.
But what's really cool about it also is the question of, like, even what necessarily doesn't have to be downtown. I mean, obviously downtown is where we're based usually, but I really like the idea about branching out and activating neighborhoods and
That's cool.
Stuff like that. So long response to your question. Yes, we definitely want to do that again. We just have to find like the right moment and the right time, and also just make sure we plan far enough ahead.
How do you think that the festival, from looking back at the first year all the way up until now, How do you feel that it's developed or changed over the last decade?
We take credit cards now, which is like a huge. No, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm going to give you like a quick. First of all, the first festival was like 4 days. One of them was like just a kickoff, and then it was 3 days of shows. We closed all online ticket sales like the morning of the first day, just because for some reason we had to print out like. Every venue got like stacks of their ticket sale paper to like know who pre-bought, and then it was just cash at the door. There's so many things we did, but I will say, even 10 years ago we could have done it maybe a little more efficiently. But it is also a testament to how much things have changed. Yeah. Like ticketing. What was our first ticketing? Show Tix for You, I think, was the first ticketing platform we ever used.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, seriously. But I mean, like, it was like for what we needed the most viable, or like maybe it was Ticket Leap or something. We use Eventotron now, which is like what all the big fringe festivals use, and it's such a godsend for us. But it's just so funny to look back, and it's a mix of what was available, what we could afford, and what we knew what we were doing. Like, so a little bit of our skill set. It's grown. I mean, not only our programming has grown year round, it's such a. I think we've become a little more holistic with our planning, and we've gotten more flexible, oddly enough, in some ways, and we've gotten tighter in others. Like the efficiency behind the scenes has never been tighter. We're a little more loose with some of our policies that are front facing, because we recognize that life is complicated and you got to meet people where they are sometimes. Yeah. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say because Simone is directing a show this year, but we were just talking about it. You've been involved on stage and behind the scenes almost every single year.
Yes, except for second year Fringe Under Glass, I had a wedding. And that broke my record, and I'm mad about it. I mean, I was in early on. I know I just personally would be in like 5 things. It was always really fun. Like I would like make a show or be in a show, and then be like, we need somebody for this reading. Come do this reading, and there was like. The same like 10, 15 people who were like all across different things. And that wasn't to say there weren't like a lot of people participating. There were.
There was like a core.
There was like a core group of people, and we would all like go around. In the first couple of years, there was a lot of like returning artists too, which was fun. Like people like Michael Burgos, Molly Balloons, like these like fringe regulars, which was cool. And I feel like now COVID really I think eliminated the realistic like touring fringe artist lifestyle for a lot for that's not to say they're not still making work, like they are. Not everybody, totally. But it's like it's gotten I don't know like how to explain it, except that like it feels more adult somehow. Yeah. Like, I really felt like we were just, like, a bunch of kids, like, running around, like, throwing sand in the air and just, like, making a mess.
I will say, like, it's definitely lost internally a little bit of that, like, chaotic magic. But
that's not sustainable.
It's gotten so much more efficient and sustainable.
Yes.
It doesn't have to burn everybody alive.
I think it's just a comment also to just how I can only speak for myself approaching life in general. Like, chaos does not thrive. I don't enjoy chaos. No. That's not to say that there are not moments that you have to embrace and you have to be willing to be flexible and go with it. But like, you can plan. There's things you can foresee. We were just talking, Dan has been with us every year with the exception of the first 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. So, and how have you from 2018 to now seen?
And it was funny, the chaos and it feels more adult. It's funny because early on, coming from media where like there are ways that we do things, and I knew the theater is much more loose, but like early on it was like, nope, there are the cables, this is what we're gonna do, and go. And now I'm at a point of just what do we have in the space? I'll figure it out. And for me, it was the loosening up of the notion of fringe doesn't really have a definition. I mean, I went to World Fringe Congress, and my big question was, what is fringe? Like I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, and I'm sitting with all of these fringe leaders from around the globe, and I'm still like, what do we do again exactly? But part of that was realizing that fringe is different for everyone, and that every city that has a fringe, it's going to function differently. And so I think that was for me was the letting go of the rigidity that is most traditional media and sort of loving the chaos that is fringe. And it really is 14-day. And for me, like again, living in Wilkes-Barre and going back and forth, like I work during the day and then it's here, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna go sit in the theater in a dark room and figure out how to make that one microphone work, because the rest of them work and they have to get tech done, but that one, and it's a lot more creative. But I think that's what's been fun about it is that change, as well, it feels more adult. I think it also it is now the platform it needs to be. I think early on it was very loose, and people we had returnees, and people were still doing well, and money was being made, and we were getting shows out. But I feel like now people look at us as sort of theater now. Not that we didn't know before, but like we are the theater makers.
I think we're better at meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's about like it's saying like I think before, and I've said like the rigid, like how rigid. I mean, just something as simple as like we used to schedule shows like. You had 5 minutes to
Yes,
finish
it
it.
was,
It
was so intense.
Because the idea then was that more is better.
Right.
Yeah.
Quantity over quality, and now I think it's gotten, and that's not to say that there wasn't quality then, but it's gotten a little more like, and to the point of like, we field requests now, and I mean, the show needs 12 mics. Okay, like 12 levelers. We'll figure it out. Like it's not casual. Like it's not lack of professionalism. It's faith and confidence and knowing we can make that work. Yeah. Whereas before it was like you are working in this sandbox and that's it. And to be fair, it's because we couldn't you couldn't accommodate to that degree. So now we're working with the Ritz Theater and the Scranton Cultural Center, Shopland Hall, and these big spaces, as well as also like my God, there was years where we were like literally building spaces. Oh my God. Which I don't necessarily.
I miss a little.
I miss a little.
Yeah.
No, you miss it. You miss it now in like in memory conversation.
Right.
No, you don't miss it till 3 a.m. rolling up Marley flooring, finding your wallet from the year before in like someone's bag. Again, I don't believe. I was just talking about this with someone. I don't want to fetishize what we do in the sense of like. There's someone I love dearly, but like recently shared a picture. It was like, and it was at a different festival, but they were like, at a Fringe festival, you just got to make it work. And they were rehearsing in like a really nice studio space, and I wanted to be like, that's not making it work. That's what that's for. That's not. You don't put your keys in your car and go like, look at my making it work.
Ingenuity.
No, that's what it does. That's the key turns on the car.
That's why that space is there.
That's why we have keys. But like,
You know what else has changed a lot about Fringe that I realized? You guys produce things now.
Yes.
In the beginning, there was like a hard, like we do not produce.
We were just a platform.
That was just a platform, and then like I think was it the first thing you produced was White Rabbit, Red Rabbit?
Liz produced that.
Maybe Liz produced that. And
We
then
did.
and then there was like Our Town, and then you've like branched out through the year. You did like the summer shows.
We started. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. That like it used to be where and trust me, building a platform for people is a full-time job.
Yes.
But Liz and I were very much, and Dan by proxy, by once you came on as tech director, it was very much about. Yeah, that's interesting, and I guess that's interesting because then that's probably how we've. And I go back. I attribute a lot of that to Fringe Under Glass. Like when people have asked me, like, "What's your favorite festival?" All honesty, I don't have one because there's something different for every year. It's never felt more the camaraderie for Fringe Under Glass because we were literally all together.
Oh man,
wearing masks outdoors mostly safely, but like because usually during the festival it's like. I don't see half the people.
Yeah,
like
legitimately.
We're operating in multiple different venues, so there was something really nice about. Simone gets to work frequently with our friends over at Scranton Shakespeare Festival, and that's one thing that I've always envied is that, everything, for the most part, everything they do, they're producing.
Yeah.
So, like, they get a resident company, they work, there might be people working on different shows at different times, but it's like one big collective. And we have a wonderful team, and we have a good time, but you don't always get that intimacy of a product. But, funny that you mentioned that, but then by doing things like Mr. Burns and the Story Slams year-round, and 1984 and stuff like that, and this summer, we get to work together. I'm sorry that this podcast has turned into us having like a company culture.
Yeah.
That's great.
I feel.
I much prefer that over the stiff Q&A.
Liz is somewhere watching that's just having commentary.
Yeah.
No.
So to expand on what you mentioned, you cover this a little bit, but do you like being able to put on shows, kind of anywhere or everywhere, as opposed to having a set venue where everything has to be, kind of in one place?
To answer that question would be to indicate we've had the option.
I don't have to relearn every venue when we show up.
No, that's again. These are awesome questions, and it's very spot on to conversations Liz and I are having right now. I like both. I as a producer want a home base. I like knowing where the chords are. I want to know that I'm going to leave my coffee here and I'll be here when I get back tomorrow. any other profession, it would be absurd and laughable to think like the office has to move every couple of weeks or a couple of months. Like, and again, that's also just media. That's theater. That's film, especially that's television.
Sure.
But I love making theater happen. We just had this conversation about next year talking about like doing more theater in other spaces, and it became this debate of, is it theater anywhere or theater everywhere? And the answer is it's theater anywhere, because everywhere would indicate that we're everywhere at all times, and that's not financially possible. But the idea of, like Dan said it before, I love a pop-up venue. I will say also, again, very selfishly, I love that on the back end. I don't like that as a performer. There's nothing more I hate than as a performer. I want an air-conditioned, freezing, beautiful theater with tons of lights that make me look amazing. What would you say?
There's merits to both. I've done a lot of different shows in a lot of different places, and there is, you guys, generally I'm lucky. Most of my stuff has been in like 2 or 3 venues pretty regularly. So I'm like, okay, I know this is probably where I'm going to be this year. I've been here before. Like, I know how to fill the space. I know how to work here. I know what our resources are going to be. So that is always, of course, very, very helpful for a model where you're not going to get in until like a day or 2 before to like know what you're going to be doing, which is like always really, really great. But there is something really exciting about having to figure out something new. Being like, congratulations, you're in the window at Center City Print. I'm like, okay, gonna drive by and see what that is. Like, we were at the Diva the Leonard the first year.
The Leonard,
that was a challenge. That was crazy trying to fill that space.
I do also want to give credit where credit is due. I mean, we've been very lucky, especially the last couple of years. Like, there's limitations, and unfortunately, money is money in any industry. But like, the Cultural Center has been very good to us.
Oh yeah, they've been great.
I really cannot express enough my thanks to Deb and Camille and John and Rachel and Jason and the whole crew over there and Pat. And we're working for the first year with the Ritz Theater under its new ownership, and I'm super excited to see that space. They've been doing so much amazing stuff, and seeing that activated has been fantastic. And we love what we use the Shake Space in the marketplace at Steamtown, and that's their home base. That's nice. It's not our home base, but it's a theater company's home base. Yeah. So when you walk in, you know that it's like a theater company's been taking care of this. Yeah. Because it's interesting though, because like it doesn't, theater is not concerts. Like theater is such a specific. It's not podcasting.
Yep,
like,
right,
I mean, they all have shared similarities and skill sets, but theater is such a difficult and complex beast, and that's why it's so expensive. because to do it to a certain scale and frequency, it's really hard to move in and out of a space. Yeah. Like, you have to become, again, that's why we're good at what we do, and we have a wonderful team, and and Liz, has such a keen eye and attention to detail, and we're able to like plan ahead and visualize before we even get access to a space. Lackawanna College, I have to give credit to Lackawanna College. The last 3 summers, they've been very generous to us. But yeah, I like a little bit of everything. In a perfect world, someday I would love for us to have a full year-round Fringe, like 200-seat black box theater space. That's the dream. But even if we had that today, it wouldn't stop us from working with other. Like, we're not going to not work with other theaters and do other things. It would actually we actually could do more, because we'd have this year-round home base that we could kind of hone in some of the bigger, more complicated stuff, and then that would free up resource and time to play in the sandbox for 2 weeks a year. So if anyone out there and doesn't want to charge a lot of rent for a lot of square footage, that would be...
Doesn't mind big black walls.
We're just going to paint everything. You're not going to make a ton of money. You're going to tick people off.
Your neighbors will hate you.
Your neighbors will dislike you.
How that happens.
But all joke. But you will generate a lot of foot traffic and revenue for the places. That's the other thing about theater that's such a... Can you curse? I'm sorry. Is it?
Oh yeah. No,
so it's fucking frustrating. Is like that. It's the art form that needs the most time in a space, so it costs the most, and probably generates some of the most return on investment for everyone around it.
Yeah. Yes, except for the people doing the theater. Ain't that the truth?
Every restaurant, every bar, I mean, not all the time. Some shows don't do great, but like, okay, yeah. I got a lot of gripes, but we're very grateful to our community. No, we aren't.
This is not a certain holiday where we air our grievances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. So we've talked in the past. I was actually watching our old podcast so that I don't repeat a lot of the same questions from when you've been on previously. Even though it was quite the one we did with you two together was like 7 years ago. I'm like, no, really?
Yeah,
oh my God.
Was that before we did Edinburgh?
Yeah, it was Edinburgh.
Was it before or after?
Before.
Wow.
Because we certainly wanted to come back talking about it.
It's the worst show I've ever done in my life. So bad. Not the play. I'm very proud of the play itself, but that run.
Move on. We're not talking about it again in front of people.
I fell out of a chair in slow motion. Oh my God. In front of an audience that was like a good 7 people, and half of them were from Scranton.
We were talk
In Edinburgh?
In Edinburgh, the first night. It was the worst show I've ever done in my life.
Oh my God.
Anyway. And they got better. They got better.
Leave it.
Okay, yeah.
A question.
We covered a lot of the acting aspects of things, but we really want to get into the directing aspect of things. So, being an actor and then moving into directing, what is that like, and does it give you a unique perspective to have both of those experiences, to be an actor and understand where the actors are coming from as a director, that sort of thing?
No, totally. I don't know any other way to do it. Like, I don't know any other way to become a director than to learn how to do all the jobs. But that's just like my personal path, But I think it definitely does help. And it definitely keeps the ego from getting too big, I think, as well as a director, to know what every job is and understand how it's done and be like, what they're doing is so hard. What I'm not going to do is think so highly of myself that it gets harder for them when they actually know the right answer, because I did that for a minute, walked away because I thought it was too hard. They stuck it out and they got really good at it, and they're like a fantastic designer, actor, artist, where I have stress dreams about remembering 3 lines in a bit part. I'm not going to assume that I know how to do that job better than anybody else, because I gave it up and walked away and tried to find something else. So, there's that aspect of it. But I think it's really important for people who want to direct, personally, my opinion, to do a lot of jobs and learn how those jobs work, and spend some time as an actor, spend some time as a designer, spend some time doing
front of house
construction, find some time front of house,
yeah.
spend some time doing promotion that I like to avoid as much as I can, but I'm just not good with dates. But
what are the dates of your show?
October 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Don't do this to me. I have the thing book-eared right here so I can remember. 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 8 p.m., 8 p.m., 4:30, 8 p.m. So thank you. No, but I think it is important for people to do that, and I love it. I probably won't go back to acting again, because, like I said, I don't want to have stress dreams about remembering my lines. I don't want to do something that I feel really vulnerable and I'm embarrassed about, because I don't have the metal, I'm my thing is invisible competence. Let me do a good job and thank you, and then just back off and sit in a chair and find my way out.
I'm going to sing her praises for a second, because you are very, very lovely, being very modest.
I think that's the case.
Simone is such a phenomenal. We've joked about this before. What was your favorite game? What toys did you play with as a kid the most?
Oh, Barbies.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Simone can look at the landscape of her productions like she's playing The Sims. It is to steal another thing that we both have a mutual love of in our childhoods and adulthoods. That you constantly know where the story is going. And I know that sounds like, well, yeah, duh.
Well, it's the job. It is the job.
But it is the job. But it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
As the tech side, not every director can do the same story.
Because you can get so hung up on one little thing, and then it's that's not what we're here to do. The best advice I was ever given for being a director, that I repeat constantly to people, is you should be the person doing the most in the planning phases, and you should seem like you're doing the least once you're in production.
Well, that's interesting.
And that to me that doesn't mean, again, seems like you're doing
Yeah.
But to your point of I need to be empowering and checking in with every other person more than I'm just blabbing and talking. Do you know what I mean?
The best piece of advice I ever heard was, being a good director is not
having the best idea in the room. It's knowing the best idea in the room. And that's, I think that's huge. But yeah, I don't know.
Would you? I mean, you've directed like media.
Yeah. It was never theater.
You should.
You should. I was like, you know what? You should, Dan. You should.
Who are you talking to? Maybe one day you can get me to do it.
Yeah.
It's it is clearly very different doing directing live television and media versus during theater, but there's a lot of the three-way that goes between the two. And watching, and again, I met you as an actor. And so seeing you direct over the summer, and it was weird with you not being on stage for a while, the 2 times that I've had it, because I'm so used to seeing you on stage, and it's like, well, Simone's here, but what is Simone doing? Oh, this is Simone's show. And they're very non-stressful because you do a lot of other things.
And someone feels that way.
But from the tech side, your shows weren't a stress to me.
That's good. I'm very happy about that.
But you're also one of the few directors that would check in with me at tech. Like most folks, like, oh, Dan's got it, and they just walk away. How was tonight? Do you need anything else from me today? And we never did, but it was just nice that you were always willing to check in. But you have done tech before. And
I was gonna say, because you've worked on like huge film sets and television sets, you at least know enough to know what you know and you don't know.
Right. And even when you were, what was the one? I think it was your show in the what's the children's space in Scranton Cultural Center?
The Junior Ballroom.
Yeah, didn't you do a show in the Junior Ballroom, or you ran? You were
Static.
Oh yeah.
And even with that show, like it was one of those. That was a space I didn't have to worry about. Like yes, I had to show you what was going on, and I'm sure something broke because that's what we do. But once I showed you how to move around it, like I didn't have to worry about that space anymore because you were there. And so that's, as the tech person, that's always the fun thing, is seeing people come through the years, and like eventually there's a venue when it's said, it's like, oh, I don't have to mentally worry, because that's the one thing as the tech directors. I may be in the Ritz, I'll be for the first 3 times this year, but mentally I'm trying to keep track of all the venues. So having people in spaces who have done a lot of things where you may not be running tech, but I know that there's someone there who, when the audio fritzes, they know what to go do at the board.
I was going to say, I mean, to answer a previous question of what's changed over 10 years, through trial and error, we've built a really good team.
Yes.
We have a lovely, and there's some people we work with year round. There's some people that just come for the festival, and it's really nice. And and the door's always open. We welcome, especially volunteers. We welcome people at all times, but
it's fun to volunteer.
It's really
It is fun.
It is
fun. It's fun being part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes it's hard to find that. It's hard to find someone being like, come on in and be part of something cool. But
But
come on in and be part of something cool.
Do it.
But no, I think it's been fun. And I think that I think really and again, I can speak mainly to the tech side, but just how the show has grown and like the team aspect. Because I want to argue 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was one of those where like I lived in Scranton during the show, and like, oh God, what was the year? I think it was in St. Luke's, where I was running tech for the show in St. Luke's.
Yes.
And tech for something where I had at the Space of Olive. So I literally was driving while both shows were happening. Yes,
all day.
But actually running tech in both though, and so like, all right, I know that they're good, and I don't want to do anything for 15 minutes here. Let me go over here, and now we have a team where I sometimes feel bored.
I will
Conor would be like, you're just here.
I will also say to anyone that whether it's like an arts festival or a nonprofit or a small business, any kind of organization, just to make it clear that to put some onus back on myself, half the time, yes, you need to build a community and build that help. The other half the battle is we weren't always great at asking for help. Sometimes it's really hard to say, we need help. We don't have a lot of money because we so much believe in professional pay and professional standards for people. But for a festival like this, the way it operates, like we really do rely on like people who can jump into the fire for a modest stipend or something. And we're not still perfect with it, but we've gotten so much better of asking, hey, could you do this? The worst thing they can do is say no.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to put one show on, just ask. You'd be shocked at how many times. That's probably one of my biggest frustrations is after the festival, especially people we know in the local community, they'll say like, oh yeah, my show went really great. I just wish that I was trying to accomplish blah, blah, blah. It's like, you never asked. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying we can magically make something happen, but like, I really could have used I needed a couch and matching armchairs. We literally own furniture in like storage and stuff like that. You might have to come pick it up and get it. But like little things like that I think we don't live in a culture that's always trained us to ask when we need the help and to believe we deserve to get those kind of things. So it's that's a very big topic to say, but we have gotten better in that.
So speaking of directing, talking about the film festival. Have you done any of the films yourself over the years?
I've not,
These are all ones that you've picked, though.
Yeah, so not just myself. So no, each year I've managed to get a good group of judges. This year, Kara Washington from WVIA, Glynis Johns always, and Glynis and Black Scranton are co-sponsors of the festival every year. So Glynis always judges, and so the three of us judged this year. Last year I had Jason Oliver, who's a photographer from down in, I think, the Stroudsburg area, and a friend of mine. Wow, I just forgot her name. I'll remember it when I come back around to answering that question. But she's actually one of the on the editing team for Wanda Sykes' show and was up for an Emmy last year. So last year we actually had an Emmy-nominated editor as one of our judges as well. And so working in film, it's nice that I can reach out to some of my friends and have folks sort of lean in and sort of lean into those things. But one of these years, I may, I've got a couple documentaries that have been in the pipeline for way too long. That if I ever get those off the ground and have time to do it, I may submit something and sort of remove myself from the judging process. But it's been fun to see the work that's come in, because film is one of those things, especially in today's world, where anyone can make a film and do things. So getting to see the different things that are out there and the stories that people are telling. Last year we had a kid who was 13 who was a screenwriter for one of the ones that got selected. And so he was a screenwriter, he was an actor, but he was a 13-year-old from here in Pennsylvania who just happened to be in the right environment with the right team and right people around him and was able to put together a really good piece. And so it's been fun to see other folks direct things and not be like on the production side. I have tons of critiques that I would love to give them, but that's what we're doing. But it's one of those, like, it's really fun to do with that. So one of these years, though, or maybe Simone will talk me into directing a play. We'll see.
I will.
But how awesome that you could give him that platform. How awesome to give that kid that platform.
Yeah, and that's what's been really interesting, because some of the ones, one of the ones that's coming in this year called Road to Lilith, the woman who's the main actor in it was part of that production team as well, and so she's actually coming up to come to the festival. But it's really cool for that platform because it's a story about the fact that women tend to be the ones who are the burden of society, and her sort of stepping out of that bounds and sort of growing on her own. And the fact that it's been seen at other film festivals is great, but we get to bring it to Scranton as well. And to tell that story here, and for those film makers, that's one of those things, is that the more festivals you're in and the more selections and the more things you have, that's what sort of helps build your resume and builds your credibility. And so that we're able to give another notch to individuals, and we're not just letting anyone in. Like, we turn down films every year, so we are selecting the best films that we get, but it's another platform and another avenue for people to say, yep, my work is actually decent, it's been reviewed, it's been peer reviewed, and it's won an award. So it's building people up in that way as well.
And there's a variety of different kinds of films and so stories that are told.
Yep, it's just shorts, and so the subject matter can be up to them in any aspect, but they're all short. And so this year, like I said, Road to Lilith is the one about this woman sort of overcoming issues in her family and speaking out for herself. There's one, it's a hip-hop artist, I can't remember his name right now, but who had gotten into a lot of trouble early on and sort of turned his life around and used music as an avenue, and is doing a lot more in his community now and giving back and uplifting individuals. So it's a short documentary that looks at that. The one that was our winner this year, it's a story about an ex-wife and an ex-husband who their child died due to police brutality, and that was where that split came up. And it's called A Time for Tea, where they're just trying to sit down and have a conversation. And we don't often see that other side. Like, once someone has passed away from these things and we see the news and we hear all these things and the settlement comes out, well, then what happens? Yeah. And so it's really cool that we get a film that we get to show here that talks about those things and looks at it. But for that filmmaker as well, that film also gets another platform and avenue out there. And that's one of the things that I love about taking up space, is that we've seen many stories about police brutality and all these things, but to see it from an African-American perspective, and it's the aftermath. Yeah. For the family that's left, how do you move on? And that's what the story is. And so it's just a really great opportunity that we give individuals, and it's a fun platform. And being the artistic director, it's fun that I get to watch them and sort of see these things happen. So,
with Fringe shows too, a lot of these shows you can touch on kind of different subjects and maybe talk about some like deeper topics and things like that. Are there any shows like that this year, or anything that might be considered controversial or anything along those lines?
Controversial this year.
I think the word is extremely overused.
You know, I understand.
But in terms of it's not just
I'll tell you the theme of my
bed of
show.
roses.
And then I'll tell you the theme of my show. and then you'll say, "Oh wow."
So
okay.
Yes.
I'm going to preface this with so I mentioned earlier we have a really awesome partnership with the Wilkes MFA writing program.
Okay.
So last year, which Simone has been hired again to direct. This is actually your third
one, yeah.
Third one. We did one in the summer, but this is the second festival. They have an awesome MFA writing program where, correct me if I'm wrong, they can graduate with a creative nonfiction or playwriting master's
Yes.
degree. And so every year during the festival, specifically, we did with Mandy Pennington a special production over the summer because she was ready to go. We're able to help them get their plays on their feet for the first time. So this play has been in the works as part of this partnership. They've selected this months and months and months ago, almost a year ago. I think they almost knew that it was time. And Simone's directing that. That's called Mimosas at the Scranton Shake Space, which is about the aftermath of a school shooting. Am I correct?
Yes.
And then simultaneously, which again just shows you the power of a fringe festival, and when you let people say what they want to say, often they're going to want to say something similar. I had committed, and again, this, to be fair, I'm doing this kind of as a special one-off. We're doing a stage reading on Wednesday night, like the only thing that night in the middle of the festival, of Columbinus, which was co-written by two Scranton playwrights, but specifically was one of the writers was Stephen Karam, who sits on to win the Tony.
Yeah.
Stephen has helped fund the production. We've been in contact with him. He's been very helpful with information and background and ideas and the financial support, which we're so grateful. And like that's just a really cool thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
That a play he did years ago, and he's throwing some dollars back to his hometown. Couldn't be more grateful. Which is about Columbine. It's about. Sure. I do think it's interesting though. One, unfortunately, this topic hasn't gone away.
Yes.
Since Columbine, since that play happened to now, and I do think, from my understanding, the one I'm directing, which has been done a million times before, has been off Broadway. We're doing as like an elevated stage reading, is very much about this particular moment in American history and what that kind of sparked. And I think what Simone is directing is a lot more about the aftermath of today. Mm-hmm. So I do think, obviously, they're very similar, and it was completely coincidental. But I don't think it's necessarily wrong that these two stories are being told.
No, I think it's really interesting.
Unfortunately,
I would actually recommend probably seeing both.
Oh, definitely see both.
Yeah, I think
you can.
Yeah, I think it would just be like a really interesting perspective on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, even in rehearsal, they come in and they're like, "Hey, so anyone see the news today?" I'm like,
Yeah.
Yep. So relevant again, still relevant. That's and like ours is like kind of like really freaky because like for us like. It's a beautiful show. Ruth Connors, she wrote this show where it's about two families. One of them is the victim of the parents of a victim, and one of them is the parents of a shooter. And it tracks their journey over the first year after the shooting. And like how they kind of move and cross each other, and like how that path is different for both of them, and like what that looks like. And it's like pretty startling because you're like, wow, what a crazy story, but also is like freaky because there's structures in place.
Yeah.
It's like, so when this happens, this is what happens. When your son kills 15 people at his school, we take away your other son, and here are the steps that you take
it
to
might be
get
the
that
first
son
time
back.
you as an
And
audience member seen
see
the story
it, but
played,
but it is a situation.
That's happened.
And she's done a ton of research. Like she's done so much research in the processes that follow these situations and what would happen to those families and how the system reacts to that. That it's really like quite frightening to see how many resources and procedures have been put in place for the families of these situations because they're so frequent for no reason.
And I think it's really interesting though that of a film that's dealing with the aftermath of the idea of the police shooting, and one of the other films that's in it is a mini documentary that's the 50th anniversary of the Children's Crusade with the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, and so but it's interesting that we've got like the notion that art reflects life, and that all separate entries have nothing to do. No one knew that these were happening at the same time, but in this sort of one moment that crystallized, the Fringe Festival is going to be talking a lot about the idea of gun violence in America, and it's not by design. But I think that's one of the great things about a Fringe Festival is that next year it may be all clowns and balloons.
There are some funny shows in there. I do have to like
There are some
It's
funny
not
shows,
just
of
doing
course,
this, but I just think
But
it's
we all have
interesting.
something. Everyone has something to say about this.
But I think it's
Given
very
everyone a platform.
interesting that like that's the platform that's there, is that when given the opportunity and when you let artists lead,
and you
This is what sort of come to this happening. There are many other shows and there's a lot of other things happening, but that it's also there are these very serious topics being handled from different angles that are being discussed that give the community a chance to have a more developed discussion. Like, here's an artistic look at it, but these are the real world things. Like the notion that there are resources and programs and structures in place for when your child does X is baffling.
Yeah.
That's not a conversation anyone wants to have, but to go see a stage play. Where we can be eased into this topic, and yes, I'm sure it's going to be dramatic and all those things, but then that opens that conversation and dialogue for those individuals afterwards in a much safer environment, because we're not talking about what actually happened to someone's kid somewhere. We're talking about that play.
Right.
And it changes that context. I just think it's really cool that we get to be the vehicle and the platform that's supposed to start those conversations and kick off of that.
Yeah, Dan. No, that was so beautifully said. That was so beautifully said. I've been dreading for months, because I've known since we got the lineup set that, like, God, I'm going to have to talk about my school shooting play. So,
Just clip that and send it to
I always say to him, one of us is the school shooting play, one of us is the
other school shooting play.
what you said earlier and I didn't realize, and now I get the joke.
And I'm in all seriousness, I'm not trying to minimize the...
No, we're not. But it's intense, and we in these rehearsals, and we.
And by the way, we're not even the first piece of original theater in Scranton this year to talk about school shootings.
Right.
Rev Theater did that, was it Soda Can play, I believe? I could not see, I heard wonderful things, but like they work with like students and stuff like that. And I saw that was like back in April, and I knew these were coming on the horizon, and I was like, oh my God. And again, to your point though, this conversation is active. And when you let artists lead conversations, you're gonna, there's a theme happening in our country.
And especially when those artists are parents or young people who have spent their whole entire lives
in drills
in
and-
school going in active shooter drills.
Right.
So they're going to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think, again, it just goes back to when you let artists lead and let them decide what they want to do. Some will, thankfully, also just do funny...
Shows about a clown in a lighthouse.
Something called a lighthouse.
2 weeks of shows. There is promise. There's something for everyone.
Yeah, there is something for everyone.
Yes.
I'm sitting in on another cool rehearsal. Like, we're sharing a rehearsal space with Tiny Beautiful Things, which is like gorgeous. And
Patasphere, an original musical by students, and like, I mean, I'm not going to begin to name everything because I will inevitably forget something, but
there's so much cool stuff to say.
yeah.
I feel like, too, this is a much healthier way to have these conversations than how you usually see them, because...
In comments.
I mean, well, we have such a focus on social media and the things that people say, and I feel like it's such a... We have to look at it from a broader perspective and understand that is a microcosm of the actual conversation and also of reality. Like, just because a couple of trolls jump into a local news station's comments doesn't mean that really reflects all of the area or all of the people you know, or has any sort of real weight outside of that. And I think the media is partially to blame for that, especially with Twitter. I think it started with Twitter, and now it's just all social media. But this focus on let's find one tweet that says something outrageous, and then say, all people are, can you believe this is what the internet is saying, or all people are saying this? And it's like, no, it's a handful of people that you happen to find on Twitter that have maybe 100 followers total.
And you get so many clicks.
Yes, and now you've made it a news story. You've made that the news story as opposed to the actual, like, what really happened.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's not the way to have those conversations.
And and I think it's like tricky because there is something to the importance of social media and igniting change, because it's like people that otherwise would never have any sort of platform have now been given a platform to be like, actually, this has been happening the whole entire time. And everyone's like, the whole time. So these things are important, but they are not contextualized in any way.
Yes.
So it's just a one-word sentence. But like the hyper specific experience is really important. And I think that is the cool thing about like theater in general and Fringe specifically, is that you can tell a hyper-focused story. And you don't need a ton of money. You don't need a ton of resources. You just need like the urge to tell the voice and the platform, where you can tell a hyper specific individualized story, but provide context to be like, it's actually a lot more complicated than maybe you understood it to be. And here's why. And maybe you're right for the reasons you thought. Maybe you're wrong for a reason you did. Either way, like, I think it's, I think theater is really important in that way, like against social media, which...
I would also say in that same vein, like, I don't think people, sometimes as artists especially, they don't appreciate like how impactful your work can be.
Yes.
I mean, it took, a Fringe Festival it was a scapegoat, but let's not forget, it's been a couple months, but a Fringe Festival has been used as the scapegoat in Florida for an entire state not receiving arts and culture funding. And I was just at a conference in Stockholm, and the people from Orlando Fringe were like leading, and to be fair, it was also involved Tampa and Fort Worth, but Orlando was the particular one singled out. And they led this really awesome conversation and panel about what happens when your organization, mind you, this is people who run Fringe Festivals, so our conversations are very niche and specific. But it was about, what do you do when the governor of Florida, that's really scary, singles out your organization? And then I don't think enough people realize this. They offered to withdraw their application, and the cowards still wouldn't budge on his policy, which was clear that he was just doing that. That was he sent his staff and said, find something. And it was like some show at the Tampa Fringe was like the Big Titty Show or something. That ironically was like a stand-up comedy show that was just a theme. It had nothing to do with that subject matter. Of course. But they needed a scapegoat. They needed a vehicle.
Sure.
So an adult show that was labeled for adults at probably 10 o'clock at night. An entire, all the museums of Florida don't get this one particular funding source. I'm assuming there's other streams, but it's absurd. And then just speak to the other end of things. When I was at this conference, on a more positive note, a person from oh my god, I can't remember what festival he's from, but he just started a festival elsewhere in the United Kingdom, and he specifically said, "Oh yeah, I wrote my PhD thesis about Fringe festivals, and I specifically cited Fringe Under Glass."
Oh wow,
as a model and uniqueness, and other festivals that did something similar, and took that, and that was actually their first year in 21. What they did something very similar and used that model. So again, you don't know what ripples out with the little pebble you throw into the pond, right? And that's and that goes both ways, both the level of I remember, I woke up that day when from a nap when DeSantis announced, it wasn't super in the morning, when they announced in Florida and the Orlando Fringe was having to put out an initial statement, and I saw in the blogosphere, social media sphere, something was happening, and it was just so it was mind-boggling to see CNN Fringe Festival in Florida, blah blah blah, and it's I go to conferences with these people. I've performed and produced at that festival, and it was that easily, the couple votes here or there in any direction, and I'm putting both parties on blast here. But things can happen so quickly, and the tide can turn so fast that I really, really have to give that festival and all the festivals in Florida respect for how they handled it so gracefully, but firmly and direct, and just that's that can happen anywhere. It's it's really scary.
Well, speaking into that, I wanted to mention that Scranton Fringe also produces shows throughout the year, and this is not just a couple of weeks, but all the time. And one of those things involves drag, and drag has become such a politicized form of entertainment, which I never would have, you asked me that 10 years ago, I never really would have thought of it in those terms at all. And now it's just become this buzzword that people jump on, and there's just a whole group of people that are just obsessed with the idea of that drag is full of predators and all this other kind of crazy stuff, and they have all these stories with no citations and no real actual examples of all the horrible things that they talk about. So how does it feel to have produce something like that for so long? And obviously the Big Gay Story Slam, things like that, are just huge successes in the community. People love them. People talk about them. They come back, year after year after year, and then to all of a sudden have out of nowhere people politicize that. And go ahead.
I would love, Simone, would you say something?
Drag has always been political. I just want to say it's been politicized, but drag has always been political.
Right. Yeah.
Drag was always about speaking truth to power, and it has definitely become a bit more innocuous and commonplace with RuPaul's Drag Race and drag brunch and drag bingo, and all these things are wonderful because drag is wonderful. Drag is amazing. Drag is so much fun. People love it. Yeah. It's an art form. It's just like any other art form, but it has always been political. That's what I want to say.
What I will also say to that point, so to say how we have been responding to, I will say we've actually been pretty lucky. We don't get a lot of pushback. It goes back, I think some of it, seriously. I think some of it goes back to what you said earlier about when someone have we gotten do we get negative comments on like the WNEP Facebook post when they recap it? Yeah,
Sure.
Part of it's
They're doing something right.
There is a healthy balance between you do need to be aware of what's happening. You need to be aware of, unfortunately, in our day and age, threats. We do have private security. Unfortunately, we've added that in recent years because and of course nothing's ever happened. But I think half the battle is not elevating the minority negative, because that becomes more of the conversation than what you should be talking about. I also want to acknowledge that we're also very well aware that this, as Simone said, it's always been political, and this current specter of drag, is just one. It's just a veil against transgender. Which and to be clear. 100%. Anyone logically should know that drag and transgender are two totally different. One's an art form, one's how people live their life and present, and and both of which should be protected and are wonderful. So there's also a little bit of when someone makes a negative comment, I'm not the victim here. Do you know what I mean? Sure. I have to steer the ship of this organization and make sure that we're all safe and we all have a good time and we have a healthy platform. But but I mean, I've had. That event in particular has gotten us certain attention over the years and has been used to scapegoat. And I really don't want to go down that path too much. But it never had anything to do with the actual content because that person didn't know the content. And, when they talk about our big gay bash, it's, it's really great. I, from a dark humor point,
they're complaining about our big gay bash?
Big gay bash.
Just busting fake bottles over my own head. Again, I'm putting myself on that.
Just on stage.
Yes.
Just one after another. I hate myself.
This year's theme was "It's me, I'm the problem."
Help me with this. Help me with this. No, but again, the point of okay, they can know our name, and then being told that we have to respect that other people have opinions, and again, it's never have said I've disrespected your opinion. Your opinion should not impact how me and others get to live our lives, and that person then gets picked up for trying to solicit underage sex from kids working up at the grocery store in Dixon City. This is a true story. No, I'll say it later. It's fine. Google, you figure it out quickly. But and again, the hypocrisy.
Every accusation is a confession.
Every accusation is a confession.
Yep.
Except mine.
Except ours.
Which are just accusations.
Just clean accusations. Just.
I always mean what I say.
Yeah.
I feel like Liz just fired all three of us.
Yeah. It's
Seriously. All the passwords have been changed.
Yeah.
Just changed your name.
So please tell me, somewhere in here that you have some entertainment for the straight white people. Please, there must be some.
Take a look.
Mimosas.
Please.
The school shooter play.
We're gonna put a bunch of lights on a building. Where you can go to the end. No, I'm joking.
We have a lot. We really do have, in all sincerity, we have a lot of amazing stuff. We also do have stuff for children.
There's
which, by the way, and this goes back to the point of not everything at the grocery store is for everybody. As long as you're told what's in the ingredients of something. Do you know what I mean? We have in our guide, on our website, in all our marketing. The kickoff party, which everyone should be coming to, the giant 3D projection led by wonderful regional artist Michael Nasser, completely transforming the facade of the Everhart Museum into a 3D digital living canvas. That's going to be our kickoff party. And we have musicals that are literally starring and written by, young adults and youth. We have weird experimental. We have stuff at the children's library that's everything. For us, the thing is that, not all art fits in all spaces, but we can find a space for all art. Yeah. And that, and other little quips like that I've rehearsed. But
They're great.
They're awesome. But the idea that, we have free, and a lot of the children's program we have is free, which we like to reinforce and mention that as well. Because even though a lot of our events are ticketed, it's very modest. You can also buy a VIP pass. We really try to make the festival as inclusive and accessible as we can within the resources we have.
So there's 9 different venues that
I don't even know.
It's great, so you can have passes.
That's why I went by the guide.
No, you're right.
I went through it.
We do in the guide have 9 because I can see 9 here in this.
Yep.
That's the wrong counting the wrong thing. Okay.
Just a map. We do have 9, but in actuality, though, that's not I'm looking at this, and that's not counting the V Spot. It has certain pop-up special venues. That's not counting the V Spot. That Pocket Park downtown. We're going to be doing more live music on Saturday, October 5th, I believe. The Mediterranean Garden, which is also a venue for some of our pop-up music, for our pop-up series, which you can go on our website to find more out about. So, like, in actuality, we're probably activating, I would say, closer to, like, 13 spaces.
Okay.
13, 14 when all is said and done. Those are, like, the main core venues.
So you mentioned the light show, and so maybe we'll go through a couple of highlights of what maybe some things that stand out to you, or
Yes.
things that
Is there anything
that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah.
I would just say they all have lights. That's all I know about them.
They all have lights.
Also have lights and sound.
They have lights and sound. They shall be seen and they shall be heard. Definitely, I mean, speaking of the 3D light show, that will continue on to Friday the 27th. We have a silent disco at the Everhart. I highly recommend that. I really, as a rule, don't try to, like, hone in on too much because we want you to come see everything that you possibly can. There's a lot of really cool touring work. I will say the first weekend, I'm a little biased. There's a show called Breadcrumb, written and performed by Richie Whitehead. That'll be at the Shake Space. It's like a one-man clown in, like, the very, like, theater traditional sense of the word clown. The Ocean and Lighthouse Keepers have always been friends, but when the sea suddenly steals his shoe, a lonesome lighthouse keep leaves his post and shirt of his faithful. I can't read the whole thing. I saw the trailer video for it. It looks so funny.
Okay.
It's so weird and cool and interesting.
I'm to see that. I love a clown.
I love a good clown. I know they've been on your podcast before, and I think we're going to have one of them on the next time we come on to talk about Fringe Fest things. We have the Battle of the Bards at the V-Spot, which is super exciting and awesome. I also wanted to mention that I think it's talking about, like, the ripple effect and how things grow and community builds. I don't mean to take anything away from the V-Spot because they're an awesome venue on their own, but I do believe that they're having this here because of the community and the presence that you built through the open mic.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've seen from the open mic that has been really cool is it's led to that interest, for other things. Like Monk does a great show once a month, the Party Poets, and he does that at a couple different venues. But it came to the V-Spot specifically because he and other poets started showing up to the open mic and doing poetry, and people are like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
This is great. And it's one of those things, poetry, theater, whatever. Your average person might go, oh, I don't know if that's my thing, and I don't know if I would show up to something like that. But when you put it in front of them and you say, here it is, they actually really enjoy it, and they really get into it, and they really understand. Then they understand, oh yeah, okay, this is for everybody. It's not just has to be a certain person's thing or something like that.
Well, because 9 times out of 10 they saw some crappy, like, they were forced to read Our Town in 7th grade.
Right. Or
That's what
write a poem or read boring poetry
Here's
that they
a poem
didn't
that
like.
You're way too young to understand. Yeah. Absolutely, it will not resonate with you.
Yeah.
Like, here's the words they used and why. And, you're like, okay, and then you read it 20 years later, you're like,
I have, like, a visceral reaction when
time
someone
and
says,
place.
like, the Transcendentalists. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, it started with that, I think, and then came in with the we've had Ryan J on the show before, and the whole Battle of the Bards thing, I think, also came out. Like, let's do a little. I always said to him, like, I'd love to see a little bit of theater on our stage every once in a while, because it's like we get a variety of different stuff, but we don't have people like just doing a monologue or say, hey, I have a play coming up, and why don't we do a scene from the play and use the open mic as an advertisement for the play? Like, hey, did you like this scene? Come out and see the whole show.
Did you hear all the upcoming Fringe shows? Did you hear
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a
You're
great idea.
welcome to come anytime. And that stuff has gone over really well, because even the people who are like, yeah, whatever, are sitting at the bar will all of a sudden be like, okay, what is this?
Yeah.
And they really take an interest, and you might spark something. Or they might say, hey, you know what? I know somebody who'd be really into that. I'm going to tell them about it and go to the show. So that, I think, has, started at the open mic and then kind of developed into these other events and stuff. So, yeah, Battle of the Bards is super fun.
Can't highly recommend that. We also have a visual. I mean, we are performing arts first and foremost centered, but I do want to mention that we partner with the AFA Gallery.
Yeah.
We're having an exhibit this year, so there's a little bit of a retrospective element. You'll get to go through our timeline a little bit with photos and past memorabilia that we've been saving for 10 years. But also, it was an open call through their membership to, again, let artists lead the way. What work do you want to display? Maybe you have work that you haven't had an exhibit or a gallery hasn't been welcoming to yet. So we have, I think they have like over 40 artists now, or 30
awesome.
pieces, something like that. So that's actually opening Friday, September 20th, even before the festival, and it'll be running on display throughout the festival as well. So again, it's just, when we can do what we can do and we have the right resources and the right people, it's just really incredible both on the local artists, amateur, professional, touring, everything in between. That's probably what I love most about it too, is that it's truly a collage. That's literally what's partly inspired like our branding design for this year, which was the idea of every year the festival's a collage, and this is like the collage of collages in 10 years. So
I'll put that up on the screen so people can get a closer look at that.
yeah. I do have to give credit.
artwork.
Grace Danella and Liliana, please forgive me. Oh my God, what's your last name? Oh my God, it begins with a G. What is your last name? They're in the guide. They're in the guide. Thank you, Simone.
guide.
They're in the guide. Liliana Damanian and Grace Danella, I'm so sorry, guys, are two of our wonderful interns this year. Grace and Liliana, I literally refer to them by their first names. They did all of our marketing branding, and they did such phenomenal jobs. They are students at Marywood. They're like rising juniors or seniors, I believe. They're phenomenal. I'm so sorry if they hear this and I didn't remember the last names. It's been a long day.
Well, I think we should close out, since we are thinking about the memories of the Scranton Fringe over the last 10 years. And like you said, the show that's curating that, pictures and things. What is maybe your favorite Scranton Fringe memory that sticks out in your mind?
For me, one thing I truly like those first couple of years especially are like a bright spot in my brain. Like they were so much fun and like so chaotic. Like one of my favorite things like would be a few things. Number one, there was at the end of the nights, back in the office, counting money, talking shit. That was always a lot of fun.
Man, we were a cash-only festival.
Yeah, cash-only festival. So like your sister and we'd all be sitting there and everyone's like got notebooks in front of them, counting money, talking shit. Was like a really formative memory.
Because
there
we
was
give
like
most of our
that.
money back to artists, so we have to make sure the numbers add up.
Yeah. And so like there was like everyone was like checking it over and over. And then there was that time where that like walkable murder mystery came to town. And that was
Yes.
so much fun, and I like assaulted the actor because I like thought I got so wrapped up in it. I was like, I know what you did, you fucking liar! Like, they're gonna get you. And he's like, lady. So like,
No,
that was
I'm
like
making
really fun.
I'm making
yeah.
$20 an hour.
Yeah, he's like easy.
Whenever you
I
get a
didn't
hand
do
from now,
it.
I'm just gonna go lady
Yeah.
from now
I
on.
think it might have been
lady,
the same
yes,
year,
yes,
but it was one of my two things I'll say. Fringe Under Glass the first year, again, because it was just like such a spark in such a dark time that we needed.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful and so much camaraderie. I also, a good friend of mine told me they were going to see shows back to back. It was like one of the early years. And they were doing like yoga in Courthouse Square to decompress for an hour. And when they opened their eyes, there was 12 people standing around them because they thought it was a show.
So
Which was
funny.
such a. But I love the fact that like they said, okay, what do you got? And it was just some girl doing yoga. Square. She opened her eyes and she was like,
So
I'm not a show. And they were like, oh, because she was wearing like her
That's
fringe
so
button and stuff like that.
awesome.
That energy, I love. So I love seeing that. And I've seen it every year in one capacity or another. So that would be my answer.
G was a great answer. That was a great answer.
What would you say, Dave?
If you're doing yoga downtown in public, you're a show.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think one of the first ones that pops out, there was one year, without going into details, Connor and Liz couldn't be found, and someone was like, we need something done, and they came to me and they were like, well, you're the third director, you're in charge right here. And I was like, no, wait, did I?
Yes,
and
I
it was a notion of, wait, they made me a director. Wait a minute. When they're gone, dang it. I had to deal with whatever the situation was at that point in time. So, but sort of that notion of,
That is also an amazing moment that neither of us could have had.
It was just one of those things. I was like, where are they? This is the no. Damn it, this is my job.
That's not mine.
And I think for me also the first year, a lot of the shows were still on Lackawanna Avenue. And while I knew what Fringe was, I didn't fully understand it. And so like walking into literally empty, dusty, unused spaces and sort of being told, all right, so this is going to be one of the venues. And then walking into another space and I'm like, what are you talking about? And then like 3 days later, I've made a venue. And like an artist comes in and they're like, this is awesome. And like they're so happy with the space. And so that notion of, it was just that first time of, oh, we can literally make any place a theater. And like that feeling, and then every year since, like it's once we get started up, like I think I've said at the end of every year, don't call me next year. But then waiting on that phone call, but like, but then the notion of again, like, and this is what we're getting into next week. Like, we're going to walk into a space and like, all right, this is where we're making theater, and whether it is an actual theater or it's the Trolley Museum, or wherever we end up at, but just that it's that reoccurring feeling of, we get to make this space into something that is going to be truly awesome and not what it was originally meant for. And so just having that every year is sort of that feeling as well.
Nice. Anything else we want to mention before we wrap up?
Please go to scrantonfringe.org. Get your tickets. Tickets are for sale at all the doors of the venues if you're, more of a latecomer. But we do always encourage, go to the website, buy a VIP pass. There's a limited amount left. Go buy tickets, plot out your show. You can also download, you can either scroll through a copy of the digital guide, download a PDF of the guide, go pick up the guide at like any coffee shop now in the region. Should have a stack. And we just, again, thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
so much.
And go to scrantonfringe.org, go to scrantonfringe.org, go to scrantonfringe.org.
Come out. It's fun and it's magic.
And it's such a good time. And also, I really recommend to people, like, if you're going to come see stuff, of course, see what interests you. Also, try something that you have no idea. Like, take a chance, just buy a ticket at random. I'm available at that date and time. I'm going to go see that. And I promise you'll have an experience. You might love it. You might love it. You might hate it. It's an hour of your life. Yeah, most shows are an hour to 90 minutes tops. And usually they're like an hour. So, yeah, do that. ScrantonFringe.org.
Awesome. So the Scranton Fringe Festival runs September 26th through October 6th in venues throughout Scranton. Tickets on sale now at scrantonfringe.org if you hadn't heard that. And thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's NEPA Scene Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you like, comment, share, all that good algorithm stuff so we can reach more and more people. I appreciate everybody who voted for us in the Steamtown Music Awards. We got 3. We only have 2 trophies. I have to go get the third one from Joe because I was busy doing 4 hours, almost 4.5 hours of interviews outside of the V Spot. But I had a great time doing that as well. But yeah, I appreciate you guys voting us best podcast this year. That means a lot. And we'll hope to see you next week for another one. We're actually going to do another Scranton Fringe podcast with some different guests, and it's going to be we'll change up the questions and stuff. So there's plenty more to talk about, plenty more to cover there. So make sure you tune in to that on the 23rd. We're going to do Monday instead, so that we to accommodate everybody's schedules. But appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night.